Hello, everybody. This is Sticks with the Token Minorities, bringing you the weekly recap for Week 4 of the GBA, and joining me, as always, is my lovely co-host.
What is going on, GBA? I am the Confusion, and we are here to
Okay,
bring
nobody wants to hear about you. They want to hear about the battles. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it.
Wow! Oh, again, you did this last week. Okay.
First battle, we have the San Francisco Arcaniners, coached by George, versus the San Diego Chimchargers and Envy. San Francisco brought Infernape, Mega Beedrill, Nidoqueen, Milotic, Snorlax, and Gardevoir, while San Diego brought Donphan, Togekiss, Jirachi, Haxorus, Keldeo, and Blaziken. And in the Battle of the Undefeateds, I was expecting a lot going into this battle, and I was kind of disappointed, unfortunately. At Team Preview, I saw that a +1 Haxorus had the potential to sweep George's entire team, but that again, I kind of almost always see that because I love Haxorus. And Haxorus was actually able to put in a huge amount of work early on as it set up a DD and took out the Snorlax while doing heavy damage to the Milotic, putting it easily in range of Keldeo's Sacred Sword. While Nidoqueen was kind of able to pick up a couple kills for George, that was really all he had going for the match, as Envy's Donphan just set up a Rock Polish and swept the rest of George's team. And that's really it, because it was just kind of a sweep and very, very straightforward. And while Donphan was the obvious MVP of the match, I gotta give love to my boy Haxorus, who was able to break a hole in George's team and take out two walls that allowed Donphan to sweep late game.
Yeah, you just see how well the San Diego Chimchargers just prepared. They saw how well Donphan did in this matchup. A battle that really only lasted 17 turns. Very short battle. Donphan picking up 4 kills and still stayed alive, so that's going to help it along in the MVP race. But it just set up a Rock Polish and destroyed his team. Obviously, Haxorus and Keldeo really helping the San Diego Chimchargers damage the San Francisco Arcaniners team, so that Donphan can later on just come in, set up a Rock Polish, and destroy him. He didn't really have a great answer to Earthquake or the coverage. The natural gift was pretty cool to see. That prediction was on point, but again, it's pretty obvious on a Mega Beedrill. Still really cool to see. Again, there's not that much to talk about. It was a very quick match. It was a very straightforward match. But it was a very good match. It was very good to see how an opponent could prepare for someone that's so hard to prepare for. It's very fascinating to see a battle like this. We don't get it too often, especially between two highly competitive and very talented battlers. So a very awesome game to watch and something we don't get to see that often. So let's just jump right into our next match. We have Gym Leader Geo and the San Francisco Giants up against Fizz and the Atlanta Hawluchas. The Hawluchas brought Rhyperior, Volcanion, Hawlucha, Zoroark, Whimsicott, and Salamence, while Geo and the Giants brought their Regirock, Entei, Zapdos, Manaphy, Cresselia, and Nidoking. And if you watch Geo's team builder, he knew he didn't have that much for Fizz's team, so he came with a plan. And the plan started up working around as he got up his rocks, he got up his dual screens, and then went to Manaphy, but there wasn't that much he could really do this early on in the game. The first turn Volcanion up against Entei was so scary to see because it was the real Volcanion, it wasn't Zoroark. So going for that ballsy extreme speed up against Volcanion, even though it switched out, so it ended up going well for Geo, but really still very scary to see. As Geo was starting up his whole plan, Fizz pretty much got the chance to Toxic all of his walls, which is mind-blowing to see Geo allow that to happen. But then the mind game started beginning, because Zoroark was disguised as Salamence, but Geo did not notice it in the beginning. Only the second time when he saw the rocks damage and he actually noticed it, was he able to see that Salamence was actually the Zoroark. But like most games, there were safe switches, there was damage dealt, but the major turning point was a turn that Zoroark just died to the explosion. Normally, the man answered to the fat-ass Cresselia, but it was already poisoned, so Zoroark didn't really need to be around because this huge Cresselia was already toxic, so it wasn't that bad to see Zoroark go down, but still was an extreme turning point. I would say the climax of this match, though, was when Nidoking failing to kill the solid rock, especially defensive Rhyperior with the Earth Power. Geo knew that he definitely should have went into the Manaphy with the Baton Pass speed, but he ended up going into the Nidoking and allowed it to fall to the Earthquake, costing Geo a huge powerhouse that otherwise swept through Fizz's team. If Geo could have had a second chance to Baton Pass some speed after Rhyperior was done, Nidoking definitely could have finished the game. So the switch definitely cost him the game. After that, we just get to see Salamence click Outrage and finish up that game.
Yeah, I think this match really just came down to how each coach handled their win cons. I mean, you saw with Geo that he was overeager and reckless with his win con, and it ended up costing him the game. While Fizz was very conservative with his win con, he let the opposing team get weakened to where Scarfments was able to come in and clean up the game. And I mean, that was the difference. Had Nidoking been played a little bit better, I believe that Geo would have won, because I think he would have had the chance to set up another agility pass with Zapdos later in the game. But I mean, that's my opinion. But again, because he played so reckless with it early on and did not sufficiently weaken the Rhyperior, that's what it came down to, was Rhyperior being able to live thanks to Solid Rock, I might add, and being able to knock out the huge threat in Nidoking. So it's really just managing your win cons, and it's a tale of the tape. So yeah, that being said, we are just going to go ahead and jump right into the next battle between the Boston Red Sox and Nick versus the New Orleans Pelipers and John. Boston brought Alakazam, Darmanitan, Pangoro, Mega Venusaur, Skarmory, and Feraligatr, while New Orleans brought Mega Lopunny, Umbreon, Latios, Rotom Cut, Landorus, Therian, and Bisharp. And much like the MV game, this game, there really wasn't that much to talk about, because it just was a very straightforward game. Just no real huge plays were made. I mean, there were obviously some plays that had to be made for one person to gain the advantage over the other, but it was just a straightforward kind of attack what was in front of you type of thing, with obvious exceptions. But something kind of cool that I noticed right off the bat was that special agility Feraligatr had the potential to sweep with simply with the coverage of Focus Blast and Ice Beam, while Alakazam with regular coverage applied the same amount of pressure. In the battle, though, all it turned out was that Ice Fighting coverage proved to be super effective. There's your bad pun for this episode, as Pangoro with Ice Punch and Drain Punch took out the Rotom after scaring out the Umbreon. From there, like I said, it was just very, very offensive, with Pokemon seeming to go down every other turn. While Feraligatr didn't do as much as I was hoping it would, Alakazam really came through and picked up an impressive 3 KOs and the game win for Nick.
Yeah, like you said, a very straightforward battle of just type coverage and attacking what's in front of you. But the most important part of this match is just looking at their teams. You just see how much offensive pressure the Boston Red Sox have up against the New Orleans Pelipers. They only needed specific coverage. Pangoro did so much, Alakazam did so much, Mega Venusaur even getting a kill. The team just paired up so well up against the New Orleans Pelipers. It was hard to watch because he could do what he needed to do, but it just wasn't enough because the Boston Red Sox just had so much damage output. They just had all the right answers, a lot of offensive pressure all around the game. So it was very interesting to see this match play out, but the Boston Red Sox just overcame them and just put on way too much pressure for the New Orleans Pelipers to really handle with the squad that he brought.
Yeah, and the Feraligatr, like I said, it didn't do as much as I was hoping, partially because it was physical, but then again, it could have run superpower and stuff like that. But either way, Pangoro, Alakazam, Feraligatr, all of those are able to just apply too much pressure to New Orleans' team.
Yep, exactly. So let's hop right into our next game, which is the Philadelphia Scissors up against the Milwaukee Sawsbucks. And the Scissors brought Mega Diancie, Tornadus Therian, Celebi, Scolipede, Cofagrigus, Steelix. And the Milwaukee Sawsbucks brought their Sawsbuck, their Honchkrow, Heliolisk, Heatran, Florges, and Sandslash.
So now, tell me this. What does Milwaukee switch in for Mega Diancie?
Florges?
Actually, I ran a calc. with the mixed attacking stats of Diancie, with I believe it's 32 EVs in attack is the standard. Please somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but it has a chance to hit KO Florges after rocks just with the Diamond Storm and 32 EVs in attack.
Well, look at that. See, I guess his only answer was the Horn Leech Chlorophyll Sawsbuck, and that being your only answer isn't great. He did have the Honchkrow with Steel Wing, but those are two offensive Pokemon. He doesn't have great Pokemon that could take the hits. So that's also interesting to note. But just from the beginning, we have the Sandslash lead up against Tornadus Therian. Tornadus being a usual common lead, very common set as well, and the Sandslash coming too, setting up those rocks very early. But Sawsbuck got its kill. I was hoping he wouldn't sack it because it could still do so much work under the sun with the coverage it had. But what I understand a little bit more was the Sandslash sack, because it was more acceptable because the Cofagrigus wasn't there to set up the Toxic Spikes again. So Rapid Spinning and then getting rid of Sandslash was perfectly fine with me. A turning point was most definitely when Steve brought in the Honchkrow, even though the sun was still up. I wish he brought in the Heliolisk, or if he saved the Sawsbuck, if he brought that Pokemon in. But he ended up bringing in the Honchkrow, and ended up going for the safe, not even the safe, he ended up going for the Steel Wing, but Celebi stayed in, throwing a huge Ancient Power in its way. Huge misplay, definitely a turning point. Honchkrow could still come in on rocks, it didn't die to the Ancient Power, but it was very, very bad for the Milwaukee Sawsbucks to have their Honchkrow damaged, as it couldn't come into rocks twice, which is really important. Later on, the sun goes back up again, rocks are set, pretty much a lot of minuscule damage. Some great plays was the Heavy Slam hitting the Heatran on the switch, and the eject button, bringing out the Heliolisk and allowing it to utterly destroy the Steelix under the sun with HP Fire. An awesome play. Steve really should have read through the Protect, though, and switched into his Honchkrow, and then could have Steel Winged. I think that would have been a great play, because you know that it's going to have Protect. It's very likely, so maybe the switch into the Honchkrow could have been more beneficial, but I do understand why he stayed in. Either way, he would have lost him on if it just ended up attacking the Heliolisk, so it really was a 50-50. But that's what ended up happening. Honchkrow Stealing was not able to knock out the regenerating Tornadus after a +1, and Heatran was finished off by the Mega Diancie as well as the Florges, and that was the end of that battle.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to give credit to Steve, because, I mean, his team was really cool, and the Sun base with, like, solar power, I mean, bringing Sawsbuck, and then Scarf, Heatwave, Honchkrow, I mean, it was just a really cool team to see, but unfortunately, he really just had nothing for the most of Chimpac's team. I mean, it was unfortunate that he did overpredict against the Celebi, but I mean, Chimp made the safe play. If the Honchkrow had outsped and gone for Heatwave or Brave Bird, then Chimp would have had a free switch into Diancie and gotten a kill. However, Steve overpredicted, which ended up costing him pretty much his Honchkrow, and that was unfortunate to see. Really, the best part of the match for me was when Sawsbuck 1v1'd a Cofagrigus, but once the floor just got he got in on Toxic Spikes, which gave him regular poison. I mean, it was pretty much over from there, because all Mega Diancie had to do was come in and sweep up the game, but really just couldn't break through Chimpac's team, as much as I love the team that Steve brought in his own. That being said, let's go ahead and jump right on over to the team that has caused me the most amount of problems this year. It's the, what is that? Borussia? I mean, I've had people tell me it's Borussia. I've had people tell me it's Borussia, so I apologize for saying it wrong. I'm going to say it both ways. Odds are I probably still said it wrong, but it's the Donphan, coached by Lars, versus the Tampa Bay Luxrays, coached by Mono. And the Donphan brought Crawdaunt, Mega Alakazam, Mesprit, Druddigon, Aromatisse, and Shaman, while Tampa Bay brought Mandibuzz, Bronzong, Excelgor, Mega Manectric, Amoonguss, and Porygon Z. Team Preview made me really, really happy for this game, because I saw that Porygon Z, one of my favorite Pokemon, had huge potential to do major damage, as everything on the Donphan's team was O-Code or 2-Code by Adaptability Tri-Attack.
Except for Druddigon.
Well, shh. Well, I think Specs adaptability tri-attack would have been able to two-hit KO. I was just going with like a Spec set in my...
Right, we do know he brought the Scarf sets though, so it did lose some power, and we saw the Assault Vest Druddigon, so...
Yeah. You know what? Stop poking holes in my logic. Just let me have my flawed logic.
Alright, you go for it.
Anyway, early on, Lars was able to effectively use Crawdaunt to scout out Mono's defensive sets and was able to gain an early advantage with Mega Alakazam taking out the Mandibuzz. However, PZ immediately came in and got a kill on the Mesprit, and from there, it was pretty much just back and forth, both teams trying to set up their win cons and trading KOs in order to get safe switches. Mega Alakazam and Porygon Z both netted 3 KOs each, but the clutch Pokemon of the game was Excelgor, who used a Choice Scarf to outspeed Mega Alakazam and bring the game home for Mono. It is actually worth noting that while Mono obviously prepared for timid Mega Alakazam, in the match, timid Excelgor would have been all he needed because Alakazam was modest, and that just shows how much preparation goes into these matches where the game could have been potentially decided by something as simple as modest versus timid.
Yeah, but that just shows the team prep, how they were trying to team build so efficiently with a Scarf Excelgor, knowing he couldn't outspeed a max speed at Mega Alakazam. And although you might think, well, why would he bring a max speed Mega Alakazam? He doesn't need to outspeed those mons, because, you know, it's so much Inception. He's not gonna speed creep this, because he knows I normally speed creep this. There's so much Inception when it comes to team building, so both of them playing safely was interesting, because the Luxrays played safely by bringing a Scarfed Excelgor, but the Dawn fans ended up playing a little risky with their Mega Alakazam being modest instead of timid. Didn't matter. I think it still outsped the Mega Manectric, which is great. But the battle was so fascinating to watch, with two Scarfers that just punched tremendous holes in the Dawn fans' teams. He even noted he didn't have that much. He didn't bring that many Pokemon other than the Assault Vest Druddigon that handled special attackers. You saw just how well Monotui played around the Dawn fans' offenses with Crawdaunt, with their Druddigon's coverage, because it did bring a pretty offensive set because he had to with an Assault Vest. He played around the Mega Alakazam very, very well towards the late game. That was a bunch of 50-50s there, so just a great end game. Very cool to see. Although it could have went from a 1-0 to a 2-0, depending on how well they played, it was still an awesome game to see them play. And just really cool to see Mono coming into the league undefeated. Even though he has a loss because of Gubs, he himself as a coach is undefeated with this team, which is impressive to see. So let's move right on into the next match, which is the Mewcastle United up against the Pittsburgh Piratas. The Mewcastle United and Fu brought their Crocodile, Crobat, Kyurem, Electros, Mega Banette, and Mew, while the Pittsburgh Piratas brought their Rotom Heat, Tangrowth, Mega Pidgeot, Heracross, Licky, and Liepard. Right away, the battle starts with Rotom Heat putting on so much pressure because Fu was just trying to predict around it. Fu was trying to switch with the Crobat and the Kyurem and try to see what he was going to do with the Electros, allowing certain Pokemon to get burned. It was very hard to see him not touch this Rotom Heat as it just sat there. He just tried to predict too much, when Tuff really didn't have that much of a reason to switch out or do anything silly. He just had to Volt Switch or Will-O-Wisp. So that was ultimately very hard to watch him get so predicted. The hacks was obviously the hardest part of this match, but Tuff did play very well. The confusion hacks on the Electros mattered. It allowed him to not be able to take another Hurricane, and the full para on a +2 Mew, etc. The hacks was not fun. But Oblivious Licky was something Fu should have known, especially since he designed his Mega Banette to deal with the Licky. Although I do notice he mentioned that his prep wasn't all that great this week, so I can understand that, but Tup won. Fu still played very, very well, but Tup just played better with his Pokemon. He just had better answers with Liepard, with Heracross, and with Mega Pidgeot just tearing huge holes. So that was just a very drawn-out battle, but a very amazing battle to see them play.
Yeah, something I saw immediately. I mean, I know I say I see everything immediately, but what I do with the battles is I like to look at team preview and try to pick out one or two Pokemon that I think will do work in this game. And one thing that I saw was with the right move, Heracross was able to do huge amounts to Fufu's team, again, with the right move, but I thought it would come down to the prediction game with Heracross and how Tup was able to ease the predictions or just make really bold ones, and that's really what it came down to. I mean, Mega Heracross was able to put in work. I mean, the paralyzing of the Mew was able to get a free kill on something, and then late in the game with the Earthquake against the Crobat. I mean, that was technically a prediction, even though it was his best play because the Crobat would have taken itself out with the Brave Bird and it had to roost to have a chance. But I mean, it was still just which move with Heracross would be best for each situations. Obviously, like you said, the hacks was very unfortunate, but I mean, it's part of the game. I hate saying that. I hate when people say that, but yellow color was actually something very popular this week from all teams that I have seen, so it was unfortunate to see, but it's something that we will not be seeing the last of for sure. That being said, let's go ahead and jump right on over to, in my opinion, the single haxiest match of the entire week, and that is Real Marill, coached by Miguel, versus the Utah Jasmine, coached by Coop. Real Marill brought Weavile, Mega Blastoise, Roserade, Uxie, Registeel, and Talonflame, while Utah brought Sableye, Clefable, Mega Gallade, Empoleon, Aggron, and Weezing. And really what I noticed was that Mega Blastoise had the ability to put in a ton of work, carrying potentially super effective moves for Clef and Empoleon, which would be Coop's likely answers to it. Early on, the potential for hacks was everywhere. Now, I didn't say hacks was everywhere early on, but the potential was there, with T-Waves flying left and right, and Swagger becoming a factor due to the fact that, as Miguel pointed out, it is not banned in the GBA for some reason. While it was kind of scumbaggy, I do have to give Coop credit for using Sableye to take out Mega Blastoise, albeit with confusion and a Hydro Pump miss. Eventually, Swagger luck came through again as Roserade hit itself 2 consecutive times, and thus the Clefable did not have to sustain any damage before the Roserade went down. However, hacks kinda seemed ish to balance out, as the Weezing was fully paralyzed 3 times in a row, which allowed the Talonflame to set up and take it out. One kind of cool part of the battle, I mean, apart from all of the hacks, was when Mega Gallade was able to put in a decent amount of work after taking out the Uxie and getting a very, very solid amount of damage off on the Weavile before going down with Vacuum Wave. Now, go ahead.
No, we don't continue.
I mean, I kind of wish that Mega Gallade got Mach Punch because that would make it a lot better. But it was kind of cool to see Vacuum Wave put Weavile to the point where it would just go down to another Life Orb hit. Unfortunately, in a battle full of hacks, Registeel was not able to get the 1 hacks it needed, which would be a Flinch or a Para on the Clefable, which allowed the Clefable to get off crucial Flamethrower damage, which allowed the Aggron to take out the Registeel with a low kick and clean up Talonflame with Aqua Tail. While this was a very good and very high level match, I really did kind of have trouble watching it simply by how much hacks affected the way the game played out.
Personally, and I know we don't like to get personal here, but I hated this match. It was brutal to watch, as I'm sure a lot of you would agree with me. This was not a fun game to watch. Even those who are a fan of the Utah Jasmine, you guys didn't really see a game this haxy play out, especially in such a competitive league format. So, not fun. You saw that the Real Marill had so many great answers with a Specs Roserade, like you said, their Mega Blastoise, Talonflame and Weavile pressure, and then the core of Uxie and Registeel still putting on offensive pressure. A lot of things, of course, caught the Real Marill off guard, like the Vacuum Wave Mega Gallade and the Low Kick Aggron, but the hacks obviously was the most visible thing you could see in this match, whether it was a lot of Thunder Waves, which allowed Talonflame to kill off Weezing, or a lot of swag play, a lot of swagger, a lot of confusion, and if it didn't affect the match, it wouldn't be that bad, but the confusion really, oh my god, no pun intended, but the confusion really did affect this match. So, a lot, just like we saw in the last match that we just spoke about, the confusion on the Electros did end up mattering. The confusion more than mattered in this match with the Roserade and the Mega Blastoise. It was so scummy. It was so hard to watch and not fun, but that is what ended up happening. I do have faith, though. Miguel is definitely not going to let this get to his head completely. He's going to come back. He's going to battle as best as he can. But this was a hard match for him to play and a hard match for us as the fans to watch. So, unless you have anything else to say, let's jump into our last match.
I mean, as scumbaggy as, in my opinion, it was, I still have to give credit where credit is due, simply because he put himself in a position to win. I mean, while it was with luck, he did what he had to give him the best chance to win, and unfortunately, that was going for swagger and getting hacks off of the confusion.
Yeah, so let's jump into the last match. Really, I think the highlight match, which was the New York Metapods up against the San Jose Sharpedos. And the New York Metapods brought Mega Altaria, Ferrothorn, Dragalge, Rotom Wash, Medicham, and Victini, while the San Jose Sharpedos and Tom brought Starmie, Cobalion, Mamoswine, Machamp, Xatu, and Mega Aerodactyl. And what an amazing game this week was just perfect. I love this match. Basically, we have a start between the Rotom Wash and a couple Pokemon, up until the Machamp comes in, takes a burn, and is just putting on a lot of pressure. Dan doesn't know which way he's going to take it. Machamp can do so much. Thank God the Rotom Wash was able to kill off that Machamp, but then so many things just happened, especially with the Xatu, and most importantly, the Victini up against the Cobalion was such an interesting play. It was very interesting. If you saw both sides and what they were thinking, it was very interesting. It was a misplay with the Victini going for the Bolt Strike on the Cobalion, but Tom deserves the credit for staying down on that Victini and putting massive hurt onto it with a critical hit Stone Edge. So although it was Dan's misplay, it was also Tom's very aggressive and smart maneuver. It was awesome. You have to give him credit. That was a great prediction. So gotta give him props for that. Tom making the prediction and also toxicking the Rotom Wash, which was so huge and really helped him out later in the match. Honestly, towards the end of the battle, Xatu was able to roost stall the Ferrothorn and the Rotom Wash. Xatu killing off the Ferrothorn with Heat Waves and Psyshock. And then just, because the Xatu was faster, a lot of you might be thinking, why didn't he click Volt Switch? It's super effective. Well, Roost negates your flying typing, so Volt Switch actually would have done a lot less than the Hydro Pump. We saw crits, but it didn't end up mattering. It was so close. It was like 1 HP every time, but this game was just so good. Really came down to the wire. It came down to like 15 wires this game. It was insane. Like, if you haven't seen this match, please go check it out. Also, I honestly think I loved Tom's rant at the end of his perspective than the actual battle, because that says a lot. This battle really came down to the wire, so I really recommend you guys see it, but also go check out the end of that video, because Tom gave out a beautiful speech, and it's amazing. You guys should definitely go check it out. It was an awesome match. I can't continue talking about how much I love this match. Dan played very, very well. He had such a tough matchup against this team. I know that I want to bring up the fact that Dan forgot that Aerodactyl did have flying coverage in Tough Claw's Wing Attack, but I'm not going to poke around that too much.
Ace. Was it Aerial Ace or Wing Attack?
It was Aerial Ace, but Wing Attack, same thing, whatever. He did bring the Aerial Ace. But I'm not going to poke around that too much. Dan realized the second after he clicked that button, which has happened before this season even, with the Sawsbucks. Once you click that button, you realize what you forgot. But so I'm not going to hate on him too much for that. But the Aerodactyl's flying coverage is pretty standard, but it ended up doing really well for Tom, and he played an amazing game. You could really see him improving, and I'm sure everyone is excited to see what he's going to do next week, up against even tougher and very challenging opponents throughout the league. So props to him, and of course props to Dan for an amazing battle.
Yeah, I mean, Tom was just I really thought the game would come down to how Tom was able to handle Dan's dual dragons, because if you look at Tom's team, he really had very few switch-ins, and being able to take out that Mega Altaria very early was absolutely huge. While Dragalge did pick up Dragalge, however you want to say it, came in and picked up the slack a little bit with a quick KO on Tom's Cobalion, and then on Mamoswine after Tom overpredicted. In kind of a huge bit of irony, last week Tom missed a Toxic, and that was a huge play in that game. This week Tom hit a Toxic, and that was also a huge play in the game. So I want to make sure to mention that the Toxic that Starmie got off on the Rotom really was what won Tom the game, in my opinion, just because he was able to roost stall the Rotom instead of having to attack it, which I actually don't think the Xatu would have necessarily been able to come out on top in that situation. But Xatu, MVP, surviving with like 1 and 2% against the Rotom and Ferrothorn and being able to take those guys out. It was a little bit close towards the end when Tom forgot about the potential for Akaberry on Ferrothorn, but luckily Xatu was like, hey, I got you, and decided to just put the team on his back and just tank the hit and clean up the game from there. So, unless my assistant co-host, who will not stop talking, has anything more to say, I would like to jump on over to the conference picture.
Go ahead.
Well, and probably the biggest surprise, there is one remaining undefeated team. I mean, that's not the surprise. The surprise is that it is the newbie in MV at 4-0 plus 11. MV with his San Diego Chimchargers has just, I mean, he's blown expectations out of the water. I think there was maybe one person who expected him to do this well. And I mean, we know MV is a great battler, but we kind of expected him to maybe take 1 or 2 weeks to adjust to high-level draft format. Nope, didn't need it. He just decided to come in and start taking names and taking souls, I guess. But one thing that is kind of funny, though, while the San Francisco Giants are at 3-1, they still have the best differential in the entire league.
Yeah. Also, we forgot to mention in the game, but the San Diego Chimchargers brought so many sets that were very interesting. If you haven't seen the Choice Banded Hustle Togekiss, spoiler alert, that thing was, oh my god, if that came into the match, that would have probably been a top play. But just awesome to see all these opponents still up against each other, really fighting it out. As you see, even though the San Francisco Giants do have a loss under their belt now, the differential is still the highest, like you just said, so anyone is really in for the playoffs. So let's jump right into the league leaders and the MVP race. Sitting at number 1 with the Philadelphia Scissors Mega Diancie at 8 total deaths, 8 kills, 2 deaths, was the +6 differential. Then we have Latias of the San Francisco Arcanines team and the Salamence from the Atlanta Hawluchas team, both at 7-1 with a +6 differential still. Then after that, we're going to jump down to Jirachi, coming a little bit down, but it still has 7 kills and 2 deaths. Then we have Mega Alakazam and Volcanion tied with 6 kills, 3 deaths. And then we have the Infernape sitting down there with 6 kills, 4 deaths. Mega Absol still with its sweep from week 1 with 5 of those kills and 0 deaths. And then we have Victini and Landorus Eye with 5 kills and 2 deaths.
So, okay, everybody who hates bad puns, close your ears because it's coming. It is an absolute shame that Mega Absol once again was not brought, but I mean, that week 1 is still carrying it in the top 10 of the MVP race, which I think is kind of cool. And it's just great to see that the MVP race is shaping up the way it kind of should, with actual offensive Pokemon taking up the top 10 spots as opposed to Claydol and Umbreon. And also, a Fairy is leading. Well, if you look at the top 4, all of them are either Fairy, Steel, and Dragon. So, I mean, that's just something kind of cool to look at, as those 3 typings form a pretty cool core on their own.
But other than that, I think we're done.
Yep, I think that is it. Look out for the rest of the videos. I know there are a lot of transactions going on this week, so that video should be full of really awesome and cool content. But thank you guys very much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. And this is Styx, signing out.
Peace.